Okay, so now we're going to talk about Newton's third law of motion. And you're probably familiar with Newton's third law of motion. It's for every force, there's an equal and opposite reaction force. Trick is in the details, of course, just like for Newton's second law. So the third law states that whenever one object exerts a force on a second object, the second object exerts an equal force in the opposite direction on the first. Keys or things to note here are that these are two different forces, and although those forces are equal, they're not acting on the same object. There's two different objects in play here, and I think a lot of our confusion stems from trying to apply these equal and opposite action and reaction forces to the same object. So Newton's third law of motion, I didn't realize this slide just tells you exactly what I just told you. You need to make sure that you're considering the pair of objects and the pair of action-reaction forces that are acting together. I remember a physics professor at the university telling me how he wasn't super sure when flights to the moon were first occurring, whether or not the rockets would work in space or something. He was old. And they weren't sure if the rocket propulsion would work outside of the Earth's atmosphere, but they weren't considering Newton's third law. So when a rocket engine is in use, the engine is expelling gas, and the engine or rocket pushing on the gas is the action. The reaction is the gas pushing back on the rocket. So even outside of the Earth's atmosphere, the reaction to the expulsion of the gas propels the rocket forward. We'll use careful notation when we're talking about action and reaction pairs, and that's why in the previous examples, I've tried to use notation that looks like force of something on something else. Using notation like this, force of, what is this? Ground on person and force of person on ground, helps you identify the action-reaction force, or the Newton's third law pair. You simply switch the nouns from one to the next.
So you just switch